Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the Encode / Polkadot Educate program, Summer 2024. We're really excited to have you here as people file in. I'm just going to introduce myself. So I'm Rebecca. I'm going to be introducing all of the workshops in the program starting today. To start off with, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to Encode Club and the program and what to expect. And then I'm going to hand over to Bill Laboon, who's going to give us a lovely introductory session into Polkadot and Polkadot 2.0. So I hope you're all really excited. While I'm giving my introductory presentation, it'd be great if we could get some interaction in the chat. I'd love to know where you're calling in from, and I'd also love to know if you've worked in Polkadot before, or if you're brand new, and what you're excited about learning on this series. So let's get started. Just a little bit of background. So Encode Club is a community of developers, professionals, students, all in emerging tech. So obviously today we're focusing on the Polkadot ecosystem. So we run educational programs and we want to help advance your careers and allow you to work with transformative companies. So that's really our aim. So a bit more about what we do. Obviously, this is an Educate program. Educate programs are designed to give you an introduction to the ecosystem. This Educate program is particularly special because it's suited not just to beginners in Polkadot, but we're actually focusing on Polkadot 2.0. So even developers who've worked in Polkadot before will benefit from coming to these sessions because you'll learn something new, I'm sure. So that's really exciting. But other things that Encode Club does, we run hackathons, accelerators, boot camps, and we do recruitment. So coming up, there's going to be a job fair. So keep an eye out for that. So this current series is the start of 6 months of really fun learning and building in the Polkadot ecosystem. So we're starting off with the Educate series, and I'm just going to open my chat to make sure we've not got any questions. Cool, amazing. So this is the Educate series starting from today. This is going to run for about a month, and then coming up next we have the Polkadot Inc. bootcamp, which is focusing on Polkadot Inc., which is really exciting. And then from mid-September, we're going to have a hackathon, which will allow you to build with all of the skills that you've learned in the Educate and the Bootcamp series. And then finally in November, there'll be an accelerator to continue on from the hackathon. So that's really exciting. So a bit more about this current workshop series. Today, we're going to start off with an introduction to Polkadot 2.0, hosted by Bill Laboon from the Web3 Foundation, who I'll welcome onto the stage in a bit. And then on Thursday, so in a couple of days, we're going to have Region X come in and give us a talk on the benefits of Agile Coretime and its future directions. And then on next Tuesday, so a week from now, we're going to have Lastic come in and give a talk on unlocking the potential of Coretime. So a bit more on Coretime and exploring Lastic specifically on Polkadot's Agile ecosystem. And then after that, we're going to have a high-level look at asynchronous backing from a parachain perspective. So a big topic in Polkadot 2.0. And then we're going to have a couple people from Open Zeppelin come and talk to us about starting an EVM parachain in less than an hour. And then a talk from Rogue about the easy way to build a Polkadot using POP. And finally, we're going to have Filippo Francini from the Web3 Foundation close us off with an intro to Polkadot's Jam. So it's all really exciting talks that I hope you can come along for. I have left some links here. A couple of things you can do. If you join our Discord and join the community, that's where we're posting all the updates. We'll remind you about all the sessions so you won't miss any of them. And similarly, if you want to check out all of the Encode Club programs beyond just this Educate series, then check out our website here. I'll leave these links up for a bit while I welcome Bill to the stage. I'm inviting him to the stage. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thank you. We're really excited to have you today.
I'm very excited to be giving this presentation.
Amazing. Okay, I will stop sharing my screen and I'll allow you to share yours.
Okay.
As always, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'll shout them out to Bill along the way if they're relevant at the time, and then anything else we'll leave towards the end and answer then. Okay, I can see your screen, so you can start whenever you're ready.
All right. Yeah, thanks again. Just so you know, I will be leaving some room for questions at the end of this talk. So please don't be too worried if I don't answer immediately. I'll definitely leave lots of time at the end if you have any questions. So my name is Bill Laboon. I'm Director of Education and Governance Initiatives here at Web3 Foundation. I've been working on Polkadot in one way or another since 2018 and part of Web3 Foundation since 2019. So have seen a lot of Polkadot's evolution as it's gotten to this point, and I am also very excited to see how it evolves towards the future. So the vision of Polkadot, what we're trying to do is to bring about the decentralized internet. And what Gavin Wood, one of the founders of Polkadot, former CTO of Ethereum Foundation, realized is that the future of Web3, the future of blockchain technology, is not everybody using the exact same blockchain. Anytime you use a blockchain, there's going to be some trade-offs, right? So, Vitalik Buterin talks about like the blockchain trilemma. There are different features available on different blockchains. If you're interested in more security, perhaps you want to use an L1 on Ethereum, or if you're more interested in speed and low transaction fees in L2, you may have specific features for your application that don't really make sense to do at the smart contract level, but would fit better as a chain. So the idea of Polkadot is not to develop the one awesome blockchain that will do everything, but rather through openness, through interoperability, and an entire network of blockchains, be able to allow people to either use the blockchain that best fits their needs, or if one of those doesn't exist, to build it on their own. So how Polkadot works, it's essentially a network of custom-built blockchains and apps running on these. So this is really two parts: the relay chain, the central chain of the network, which secures and allows for interoperability between what we call parachains, parallelized chains. So these parachains are custom-built chains using the Polkadot SDK, software development kit, for application-specific use cases. And these application-specific use cases can be as generic as a smart contract chain. So we have, for instance, one parachain, Moonbeam, which essentially is a faster version of Ethereum. So if you are used to working on Ethereum and building with Solidity and other EVM tools, then you can just run on Moonbeam. But we also have some parachains in the network that are very specific. So for instance, Zeitgeist is a prediction market, Nodal and Robonomics for IoT, Subsocial and Frequency for social media applications. And so you can see some of these parachains are very broad and have lots of other applications running on them. Some are essentially app chains. They run a specific application. But all of them are secured by Polkadot and can interoperate and interact in a secure manner. So just to go a little bit more into depth on how this works, we have what we call the layer 0 relay chain. Now, you can't do anything in terms of putting a smart contract on the relay chain. Generally, its focus is just to support parachains. Now, that's part of what we'll be talking about. There were some compromises made in the initial rollout of Polkadot 1.0, but as we move to Polkadot 2.0, this becomes more and more the case. These parachains that these third-party developed chains connect to the relay chain. And we also have bridges to interact with external chains. And we'll talk a little bit more about those as we go on. The Polkadot relay chain is really focused on being decentralized. And so 2 things that I want to mention are that all changes to the network, and the network can be upgraded or parameters changed, anything by the dot holders, is handled by something called referenda. So these are votes on how things should change in the network, anywhere from what the ideal staking rate is to what a treasury proposal, if that should be approved or not, or some other parameter, how many validators should be in the active set, all the way to actually changing the code of the blockchain, of the relay chain itself. So this is possible because of the way Polkadot is built. It's actually sort of 2 layers. There's the runtime, the code for the chain, which can be upgraded, and then the host software. And so we actually can change the rules of the chain without a fork. And we can do this through governance. All referenda, if they pass, are activated autonomously. There's no multi-sig. You're not asking the developers nicely to make a change. But if you vote to change something, then it automatically happens. This is, I think, a very big difference between Polkadot governance and a lot of governance on a lot of other chains. It's 1 dot, 1 vote. There's no special characteristics that certain accounts have, or any extra power that they have. And we have an on-chain treasury, which is funded by a portion of transaction fees and the inflation of the network itself, that currently stores over $200 million in assets. And something I think is interesting, and we'll discuss a little bit later, is it's not just DOT in the treasury. And we've given out millions and millions of dollars. I don't have a number off the top of my head in treasury assets. In fact, actually, I do have one number. In the first half of the year, approximately $87 million worth of assets were given out for people looking to build and do things for the benefit of Polkadot. So that is Polkadot as it stands today. We are currently evolving towards what's being called Polkadot 2.0. Something I think is interesting is that the name for this actually was verified on chain, that features X, Y, and Z will be considered Polkadot 2.0. Again, this was not just a shadowy cabal of developers in the background deciding what will happen in Polkadot 2.0, but rather the dot holders themselves voting that this is what we want to have happen, and this is what we will call Polkadot 2.0. So several of these items will be discussed a little bit more in depth in other talks in this series. And so this is going to be a very high-level overview. But just so the things I want to cover here, just to very briefly go over, is the Beefy protocol and trustless bridges, which is currently live, asynchronous backing, the asset conversion palette, a multi-asset treasury with sub-treasuries, Agile Coretime, a minimal relay chain, and elastic scaling. And finally, although I know that it would be a much more in-depth discussion on this in a later talk, I want to talk a little bit about the future of Polkadot past Polkadot 2.0, especially with something called JAM, the Joint Accumulate Machine. So first, Beefy. So Beefy is an additional protocol that's being run on Polkadot that allows for very efficient state verification. So this may seem like a little bit nerdy, but essentially what this means is that we can have efficient, permissionless, trustless bridges between not just chains on Polkadot, between parachains on Polkadot, but also with external chains. So you can write a smart contract for the other side of this, basically acting as a Polkadot-like client, running on a smart contract, and using Beefy, it can follow Polkadot and vice versa. So again, what this means is that you can have trustless relayers. You can have bridges that you're not depending on some multi-sig to ensure that your locked ETH are actually safe on Polkadot, or your locked DOT are safe on Ethereum. But rather, you can trustlessly prove that there are X number of ETH that are locked up and that they can be used on Polkadot or vice versa. And this is not just for Ethereum. This is for essentially any chain that can support Turing complete smart contracts. So one of the most famous ones we have is Snowbridge, the Polkadot Ethereum bridge, which is trustless. It runs on one of the parachains that we have, Bridge Hub. And this actually allows any parachain to call out to Ethereum. So you can call a smart contract on Ethereum, or you can have assets be teleported from Polkadot to Ethereum or vice versa. So if you have an ERC20 token, for instance, you actually can bridge that over to Polkadot, and done in a permissionless and trustless way. So this, I think, is also really cool because it is governed by the relay chain. So I'd mentioned, OpenGov, where one dot is one vote. This actually controls Snowbridge. And so if there needs to be some update to it or some change, some parameter tweak, for instance, there's a current referendum that's going to change some parameters and would actually reduce the cost of transaction on Snowbridge by about 10 times. So they'll be about 1/10 the cost of what they were before. Then it can be done by OpenGov. It's done by voting. So again, this is something you'll see often in the Polkadot ecosystem, is that we really focus on being transparent, on being decentralized, and allowing the dot holders to decide the future of the network. There is another bridge mechanism called Hyperbridge. This is going to be its own parachain that can interact, essentially having virtual parachains to interact with all kinds of other chains using a zero knowledge based prover, ZK based prover. So this is basically creating rollups that access these other chains, but they're secured by Polkadot. So the long and the short of it is that we have several trustless bridges that are being developed and even used right now with the help of Beefy. The second thing I want to discuss is asynchronous backing. So this is a kind of the name doesn't really show what it actually does, but essentially what it does is allow us to produce blocks on parachains twice as fast as we used to. So parachain blocks used to be 12 seconds and now they're 6 seconds. As well as adding a few additional tweaks to the amount of computation, the timing of computation, and how much can be done to allow a more than 10x increase in the number of transactions that can occur on a parachain in a given amount of time. So how this works, if you're really interested, it's generally there are 2 steps, backing and inclusion, when a parachain makes a candidate block and sends it over to the relay chain, to the validators on the relay chain. And so how this works is, we can actually start, in the past, we had to wait for backing and inclusion, each of which took one relay chain block or 6 seconds to occur before we could tell the parachain, okay, now you can start building the next one. But essentially now, just like there's a difference between block production and block finalization in Polkadot, or if you're familiar with something like Bitcoin, you can see a transaction, 1 block in, but essentially you wait for 6 blocks before you say that it's finalized. We have a more complicated version of that. Essentially, we can start building on this block before the inclusion has occurred. And so it's asynchronous. We already start building on it while the relay chain is validating it. And so in the vast majority of cases, just 1 block 6 seconds later, 1 relay chain block later, then everything goes on, but you've already been producing the block and you're ready to go. And so you can produce blocks every 6 seconds. So obviously, if there's some sort of malicious attack or something, then you will know about this, and block production will be a bit slower as it goes through what we call the ELVS protocol on the relay chain side of things. But in general, what this means, and what we've already seen, is that this gets us down to 6-second blocks for parachains, each of which can hold about 5 times as many transactions as previously. And we've already had some very, very large amounts of transactions on both parachains and the relay chain. I was just doing some research into we had an inscriptions craze in December, where for more than 24 hours, we had an average of 81 transactions per second. And it wasn't even enough to make the fees on the relay chain rise at all. We were still well within the limit. So we have massive amounts of scalability now available to parachains with asynchronous backing. So one other thing that people have found complicated is that because we have a multi-chain ecosystem, there's the relay chain and there are 50 parachains right now, and often you want to use an asset, but first you would have to send your dot to a particular parachain that has a swap functionality like a Kala or hydration network, and then send it to the parachain you want to use. And so one thing that we've been working on is having one parachain called Asset Hub, which allows assets from different parachains as well as user-generated assets to be created and stored on a single parachain. Then recently we added an asset conversion palette. So there is a way on this same chain to easily convert from one asset to another. This is often useful because just like you need Ethereum to do anything on ETH, you often need DOT to do things, or the native token of whatever parachain you're interacting with. And this allows you to have a single place where you can get any of these tokens and swap for them. So I had mentioned that we have an on-chain treasury, which has over $200 million worth of assets right now of various types. Originally, only DOT could be stored on the treasury, and only the relay chain had a treasury, so that there other assets, since the relay chain can only handle DOT. Again, the relay chain is very simple. And getting simpler all of the time as we move features off of the relay chain and to parachains, we could only store DOT. So one thing that is now available is that the treasury can store any kind of asset that is on the Asset Hub, and actually can store assets not just on the relay chain, but on all kinds of different parachains. We also have sub-treasuries. So we have treasuries that can be focused on specific things, that can be run by curators, that OpenGov can allocate DOT to. We have a more complicated treasury system now that allows us to fund a lot of different projects and do it in very interesting ways. So one of my favorite use cases of this is for funding the Polkadot Technical Fellowship. So the Polkadot Technical Fellowship are the people who are focused on developing the core protocol of Polkadot. And there are, I want to say, around 60 members of this. I don't have the number off the top of my head, sorry. But they are paid a salary from the chain itself. So how this works is the treasury is receiving DOT as a side effect of inflation, as a side effect of other things that the network is doing. And there's an automatic process that was voted on by governance to use a HydraDX, now called Hydration, to swap a percentage of this DOT for Tether. That Tether is then sent to a special account on the Asset Hub. And from there, every month, another transaction will automatically occur to pay all of the Polkadot Technical Fellowship members their salary in USDT. So I think this is really interesting, right? We have this, the goal of Polkadot is to be this unstoppable decentralized network. And this network is paying for its own development, right? As a side effect of staking, the treasury gets bigger. Some of this gets converted into Tether. This pays the developers who are making Polkadot better, which will allow more people to use it, which will generate more staking fees, and the circle continues. So I just think this is really interesting. I don't know of any other chain that's doing something like this in such an automatic way. So Agile Coretime. One of the following talks is going to go more into depth on Agile Coretime. This is coming to Polkadot in the very near future. It's been on Kusama actually for a while now, since March, so it's about three months or so. And the idea of Agile Coretime is to eliminate the barriers to joining Polkadot Relay Chain as a parachain. Previously, there were crowd loans. We had parachain lease auctions that you may have heard of, but there were some problems with this, because what happens if you lose an auction? What happens if you want to join in the middle of a lease period? And you basically had to wait, and it was really uncertain when your project would actually be able to join Polkadot. And so what Agile Coretime allows you to do is purchase a core immediately. So what this means is essentially connect your parachain and have it be verified and validated by the relay chain. And you can do this immediately. You can do this as bulk core time, so purchasing a month at a time, or you can do it on an instantaneous basis. So you just need one block validated. Maybe you have a parachain that doesn't run often, or it's just starting up, and so it doesn't have a lot of activity, and so you only want to validate when actually transactions occur. But the long shot of this is that it makes it much easier and much more flexible and much cheaper to join the Polkadot network and interact with other parachains and be secured by Polkadot. Now, right now, there is essentially a one-to-one aspect to this. A parachain has a certain amount of capabilities, and it will just have that ability to do N transactions, every Y seconds going forward. However, with elastic scaling, we actually can vary this. You can buy more cores to get more computing power. So this is similar if you've ever done something very resource intensive on your computer. If you're using a modern computer, it probably has multiple cores on the CPU. And whenever you're doing something, maybe you're watching a movie or editing video, you're playing a game, your system may use more cores to compute more in the same amount of time. And elastic scaling is similar. So you can have more computation done by buying more cores. And then you can either have more transactions in a block, or perhaps you want to have more blocks in the same time period. With elastic scaling, you can do both of these. So elastic scaling will probably go live on Kusama, our Canary network, in the near future. And then it is estimated to be live on Polkadot by Q4 of this year. So one of the things that we always have to be careful of is the amount of computation power that's available to the validators on the relay chain. And the more the relay chain does things other than securing parachains, the fewer parachains it can handle, right? This is just common sense. If you're, if you're watching Netflix and compiling a big Rust program, and you're playing a video game all at the same time, then it's going to run more slowly than if you're just doing one of these things. And so the idea of the minimal relay chain is to reduce any of this extra work that the relay chain has to do. So this is an ongoing process, because there are some things that are done on the relay chain right now it's not necessary to do, and we're slowly moving them off of the relay chain and onto their own parachains. So in general, we want to what we call generalize the relay chain. The end goal is to have everything off of the relay chain that is not securing parachains, including things like your dot balance. None of this would actually, staking, on-chain governance, all of this stuff would be done on their own parachains. So we actually are in the process right now of, literally as we speak, the migration is ongoing, and it should be completed in a few days, of migrating identity. So identity is kind of like ENS, sort of a built-in ENS, if you're familiar with that, the Ethereum name service, on Polkadot. And that is being migrated over to something we're calling people chain. So identity has already been migrated off on Kusama. It's happening right now on Polkadot. And as we go forward, other features like staking, like on-chain governance, like the Treasury, all of this stuff will be migrated to either chains of their own or a particular chain that can handle multiple aspects of this, but will not actually be the relay chain. The relay chain's focus should be on securing parachains and allowing them to interoperate and communicate. So what we have seen here, and this may not be very easy to see, but Polkadot is moving towards greater abstraction and greater generalization so that we have block space as a service. Anyone who wants to build a parachain can connect when they want to, use as much power as they want to. So they may not need a lot of core, a lot of computational power, or they may need a lot of it. And a more efficient usage of this blockchain network. So what we've been working toward, again, greater abstraction. And if you think about it too, this is, even a step up from, this is the general progress of blockchains. If you think of Bitcoin, yes, there are some hacks to do things on it, but generally it's good for moving Bitcoin around and not much else. And then we move to Ethereum, and smart contracts could do a lot, but they couldn't really do things at a very deep level, right? Modifying the runtime. You're sort of stuck in that EVM, that using gas metering, for instance, as a way of limiting computation. Polkadot already with the Polkadot SDK allows you to sort of expand beyond these boundaries. And by these changes that we've been making, we're allowing you to make more choices in what you do, and more variation, more power to the developers. And so if we think of this as like a CPU analogy, right? We have the central processing unit. You can almost think of Polkadot as a specialized computer, that has the ability to run a bunch of different, what we call parachains, but really are very similar to rollups. You'll hear them sometimes referred to as pessimistic or cynical rollups because they are different than an L2 optimistic rollup in a lot of ways, but a similar idea. So if we have this CPU and we're moving towards more generalization of how the network works, well, we start thinking about like what exists currently in Polkadot and how can we move forward with it. So if we look at some of the pros and cons of Polkadot, some of the great pros, it's extremely performant, extremely scalable, that we have automatic data availability. We don't need a separate data availability layer. But there are some problems with this. So one, it's permanently sharded. Right, so we have these shards that are always going to exist in their own shard, and they can get more computing power or less, but they're still in their shards. Interacting between chains is possible on Polkadot, but it requires a different programming paradigm because it's asynchronous. And these parachains themselves, again, they can interoperate with each other, but it's an additional process. There's some additional work involved in doing so. Unlike a monolithic blockchain like Ethereum, L1 Ethereum, or Solana, where smart contracts can very easily interact with each other. Parachains interacting with each other, it's inherently asynchronous. It's a different way of interacting than between smart contracts, and so you have a more complicated version of what you're trying to do. So if we look at how this works right now, we have this parachains protocol that is built in to the system that is running as the main kernel, if you will, just like an operating system kernel, and allows parachains to run on top of it. However, you may have heard of JAM, the Joint Accumulate Machine, and what this allows is a much more abstract CPU, your generalization, that will allow you to run all kinds of services on top of what will essentially replace the relay chain with a much easier to program, much more powerful and much more abstract version. And so this will allow the parachains protocol itself to run as a service on top of Jam. So if you're interested in building a parachain right now, and you think that a parachain, a blockchain is useful for your application, then it is still something that will work without any modifications on Jam. But Jam will also allow you to build other kinds of services that aren't blockchains and have them secured by the broader Polkadot network. So you can program in different programming languages or things that perhaps are not chains, but you use some other different setup, and still have it all be secured and verified by Polkadot. So again, I don't want to go too much into that, especially because there is a whole session on Jam that will be given by my colleague Filippo in a few weeks. But just so you know, Polkadot is not aiming towards one specific final way to do things. This is really in some ways kind of not exactly, but it kind of the opposite of Bitcoin, which has been very stable. The idea of Polkadot is to figure out what works, make the changes, and evolve. And so all of these things that I'm mentioning in Polkadot 2.0, these changes to Treasury, these changes to the staking, how the relay chain works, and how Jam is going to work. I really expect all of this to also evolve as we figure out what works. We make changes, we see what's working, what's not, and then make it better and help bring about the decentralized internet. So thank you. I hope that has whet your appetite for some of the following talks to come. But also made you, really realize how many interesting things are happening on Polkadot right now. I always joke, I make a daily Polkadot digest where every day I post in a couple of different places what is happening on Polkadot, and every day in the morning when I come in and write it, there's always something. There's so much activity happening. There's so much passion and so many people building on it. It's really always exciting to see what's happening in the ecosystem and with Polkadot itself. So looks like we have a bit of time left. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or maybe some came in the chat.
Yeah, so Filippo's been answering some questions as we go along. I'd just like to say for Vitor, I don't want to mispronounce your name. Don't worry if you've gotten a bit lost in that talk. All of the rest of the sessions are going to go into much more depth. So you don't need a university degree to understand all of this. It will get explained more and more in more detail in the later talk. So don't worry about it. If you want, you can rewatch this session, go a bit slower, stop and start to make sure you understand. But yeah, it will be fine. Okay, so let's go through and see. I think Filippo has answered most of the questions as we've gone along.
Thanks, Filippo.
We had a couple about Agile Coretime and whether it will effectively work like a cloud service. Could you talk a bit about that?
So I guess that's one way of thinking about it, is a cloud service. So I mean, the analogy is not perfect, but the idea of being able to essentially spin up a core or a CPU just like you would for a cloud is very similar. So you can have your blocks, your transactions happening on your chain, and then if you want to use what we call instantaneous core time to verify a specific block, then you can, and then stop using Polkadot. You also, again, I guess just like actually, it's not a bad analogy. So good work. The more I think about this, right? You also can say, look, I need this for a month, right? I need to have this computer. I'm going to maybe I won't use it all the time, but I want to make sure I have it available. Then you also can say that. So yeah, I think that's one way of thinking about it, is almost like a cloud service provider for blockchains.
Awesome, well done, Simon, coming up with that analogy. Husni has asked, will people chain utilize domain names instead of public addresses for better user experience?
So no, it's not using domain names, but rather, so if you look at the way identity works currently, you essentially have an account that is associated with some metadata. And this metadata can be anything. There's some built-in metadata, so things like Matrix username, Twitter username, an ID for it. And then you can set for this account, it has this, this particular metadata associated with it. And then we have registrars, and these registrars actually verify that this data is correct and issue a judgment on them. So you can have I can say, I am at Bill Laboon on Twitter, which is true. I'm happy to, to verify that if anyone messages me. But if I just say, we can see on scammers, right? They could say, you can have like the fake Bill Laboon. This is my evil Bill Laboon, my mustache, right? Say, oh yeah, I'm actually Bill Laboon, and make an identity for that. And so what registrars do is prevent that from happening. So if we were just to use like, okay, this is, whatever, we see how many domain name squatting scams that there have been. So this is something actually we've decided not to do, that you don't have a BillLaboon.com links to this particular address, but rather we're doing it the opposite way, where you have addresses that can link out to particular, it could be whatever, your websites. You can add your own metadata if you're using, I don't know, like Instagram, for instance, I don't think is part of the basic metadata. You can actually add additional fields for that. But it's the opposite way, right? It's it's heading out from the account rather than incoming from the account, incoming from the DNS servers or something like that.
Cool. I'm just going through and seeing if there are any more. I think Vitor has asked, oh no, that's been answered. Oh yeah, no, he's asking, will any project be able to join Polkadot? So I think he's just asking, how is it that a project joins Polkadot?
Yeah, so it is a permissionless network. Anyone can join. Anyone can start developing on Polkadot. Actually, anyone could use the Polkadot SDK and develop a chain that doesn't run on Polkadot. So the Polkadot SDK, people really like it, and it's being used, for instance, by a Veil network, by BitTensor, by Midnight on the Cardano chain, Octopus on Near Network. So anyone can build with this, and anyone can. It's permissionless. You just as long as you buy you buy your slot, your core time, then your parachain can join it. If you're looking for specific steps, I think the talks here are a great way to get used to Polkadot. If you go to education.web3.foundation, we have links to a lot of tutorials. We have the Polkadot Blockchain Academy, which is an in-person or online 4-week-long, very intensive blockchain development course. We also have the Web3X online courses available on edX for learning more about Polkadot. So I would say, if you're really interested in building a parachain, you can go through some of that material, start building it. You can get through Open Zeppelin, who I know is one of the later speakers. They have a template that you can start and have a substrate-based, a Polkadot, essentially a Polkadot parachain to be running locally on your computer, very quickly, as shortly as it takes to compile. So maybe 20 minutes or so, depending on how powerful your computer is. And I am a big believer in hacking around and trying things. And so my advice, if you are looking to get into the Polkadot ecosystem, is to try building something on it. Run through some of these tutorials, download the Open Zeppelin template. Make some minor changes and see what happens, and and then get involved in the community. See if what you're building it makes sense and people are interested in joining or building with you, and using your cool new decentralized applications.
David has asked, is this development going to facilitate exchanges with other chains? Do you have any discussion about other blockchain ecosystems involvement?
So there's a lot of discussion with other chains. I will say I'm just thinking back over the last year. So Radha, our technical education lead, gave a talk at a big Cosmos conference in Istanbul. Just last week, I was on an X space with Swarm, which is a Cardano ecosystem foundation. Actually, I'm not sure what the foundation or company. And we had a discussion about the differences between Polkadot's governance and the upcoming Cardano governance system. So we have a lot of interactions with other chains besides just, also a lot of, we've given a lot of talks with chains that are also built with the Polkadot SDK, like with the Veil. For instance, I know one of our technical educators, Bader, gave a talk with them. So we interact a lot with other chains, and there's a lot of interactions there. Obviously the bridges are there, and we try, as Web3 Foundation, our goal is to bring about the decentralized internet. And we have always said, Polkadot is a bet against blockchain maximalism. And I think part of that bet is not just being involved in our own ecosystem. We do a lot of outreach and interactions with other chains. And this isn't just a part of Polkadot 2.0. This has really been a foundational part of Web3 Foundation. We've had we're starting our next Web3 summit. So this will be our third, first in 2018, second in 2019. Then COVID hit, went away for a few years, but now we're back. And the whole goal of this is to bring together people from other ecosystems, right? One summit in Berlin. So August 19th through 21st, you should come. I'm giving a talk on the prehistory of blockchain. So, blockchain before 2008. So, nothing about Polkadot in there. It's all about, understanding blockchain, understanding how this, can help our world, really. I'm a big believer in that, in the power of decentralization and the power of decentralized truth. So, so Polkadot, we've been involved with other ecosystems for a long time, and we will continue to be.
Cool. So Sky made a comment and said they were reading Akala EVM. Oh, I've lost it. EVM Plus, and we're really amazed by what substrates do. Just a comment, not a question. Okay. Simon asked what kind of software resources are available, are possible to request or rent with Agile Coretime.
So the basic idea of what you're renting with Agile Coretime is the ability for, to speak at a really low level here, and I apologize, but I want to make sure that I'm clear. So with Agile Coretime, you're buying computational resources, trusted block space. And so what you are doing, essentially, again, at a very low level, is you are saying, here is a candidate block. Here is something I want to add to my chain, and I want to verify that this is valid and canonical. And so you're handing this off to the validators in the relay chain to essentially execute on their own. When you join Polkadot as a parachain, you're giving Encode the rules for your blockchain as WebAssembly. These validators are then going to execute it themselves, ensure that this data is available, spread it among themselves. They have a whole protocol. You can look up the paper by Jeff Burgess. It's the ELVES protocol, ELVES, of ensuring that everything is correct, and then letting your parachain know, okay, now it can build this next block. So this is the computational resource you're buying with Agile Coretime. So it's very specific, right? It's not you're buying like time to use an IDE, or you're buying like some debugging software or something. You're buying something very specific with Agile Coretime. You are buying the core time on the Polkadot relay chain so that you can continue to develop, grow your blockchain, add blocks that are verified. So you're basically buying verified computation by the relay chain.
Cool. I think Filippo has answered the next few questions in chat. So unless anyone else, have I got to everyone's questions? There's quite a few. So if we've missed you out, if you could flag us so that we don't miss you out. I think that's all the questions. Thank you so much, Bill, for that explanation. It was really well explained.
Yeah, thank you.
Ivan has asked, what happens when you migrate from Rococo?
So Rococo is the testnet to the Paseo test network with the lease. So these are going to be they're separate networks. They're going to have separate leases. So you would have to get another. You'd have to buy core time on this other network as well. But since these are both testnets, this is generally not a difficult thing to do. Paseo is a community-run testnet, so you would just generally talk with the people who are in charge of it if you're having any issue getting core time on it. If you need tokens, there is both a Rococo and a Paseo testnet token faucet. So there's two things you can do, right? You can either just start a new chain, or you can migrate state, right? So if you were on one network and you can migrate state over to your new parachain, but obviously that's going to be a little bit more complicated than just starting something new. But it's actually been done in the past, so people may not realize this. Kusama, our Canary network, when it first launched, this is actually the third restart of Kusama. So actually, a few old documents, you might see Kusama CC3, Chain Candidate 3, referred to. Because Kusama started, we found some problems with it. We migrated the state to a new parachain, to a new version of Kusama, started it over again, found problems with that, migrated that state again. And this was in November of 2019 that the final Chain Candidate 3 was released, and that ended up working. We've kept it. So migrating the state, if that's what you're concerned about, is certainly possible, but it does require a little bit of extra work. If you're interested, I think we called it a hard spoon. So as opposed to a hard fork. So if you look up the term like hard spoon Kusama, you could see how that was done in the past.
Nice. Ivan said no the least time. Oh, great, thanks. Amazing. So I don't think we have any other questions because no one has flagged us for missing them out. So I will quickly just show you that schedule again, so that everyone knows what is coming up. Let me share my screen. So we've just finished the introduction to Polkadot 2.0. So if you want to rewatch that, the recording will be out tomorrow. On Thursday, we have a talk on the benefits of Agile Coretime and the future directions. And similarly, on next Tuesday, we're going to have another talk on the potential of Coretime using Elastic, which is slightly different. So both of those will be really interesting for those of you who had questions about Agile Coretime and wanted to know more. And then after that, we have a talk on asynchronous backing, specifically a high-level look at that topic. And then we have starting an EVM parachain in less than an hour with Open Zeppelin. So that one will be really exciting. The talk by Rogue has just recently been added in, so the links for that will be posted soon if anyone wants to sign up to that talk specifically. So that's the easy way to build on Polkadot using POP. And then finally, we're going to have Filippo, who has been so kindly answering all the questions in chat, who's going to be giving us the introduction to Polkadot's Jam. So I'm sure you'll all be along to see that one and have a talk by Filippo, as he's been so kindly answering all your questions. I'll leave these links up again. So for those of you who had questions about the recording, if you join our Discord community, we'll be posting the links and all that in the Discord, so you'll know what's happening. Similarly, if more talks get added, then you'll find out about that there. So that's a really good thing to join. And anyone who is interested in building in Polkadot, as I said at the start, we've got a few more programs coming up, so the Polkadot in Bootcamp and the Hackathon. So the place to check those out is in the second link here on the Encode Club Programs website. So have a scan of those, and we'll finish there. Thank you very much, Bill, for coming in again. We've loved having you.
Yeah, thank you. It was an absolute pleasure.
I'm sure people will be rewatching this talk again and again, stopping and starting, making sure they've understood everything you've said in preparation for the next talks. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for all the thank yous in chat. I'm sure they're all directed at you, Bill. So a big thank you from everyone. And of course, thank you to Filippo for answering everyone's questions. Amazing. We'll end it there then. I'll stay here for 1 minute to let anyone scan these QR codes, but otherwise have a great morning, evening, afternoon, night, depending on where you are, and we'll see you on Thursday. Thanks everyone.